Welcome to session one, a roadmap to food security. For your information, our three panelists have chosen to each begin with their personal land acknowledgement within the context of understanding that everything now is about land. So without further ado, I'd like to bring forward Don Giberson, who is probably the most instrumental person in making this event happen. And to let you know, Don Giberson is a professional life and business coach. He's the board president of Transition Nanaimo Society. He hosts Climate 9/11, a weekly radio show on CHLY 101.7 FM, exploring practical and innovative solutions to the climate emergency. Don, over to you.
Thank you, Marjorie, and welcome everyone. Glad that you have joined us today. As Marjorie said, this summit is about food, farming, and climate change, and all of those things are really about our relationship to the land we live on. So before the welcome session today, I went outside and I sat with the land. I apologized for the way that we have treated her. And I asked for her guidance and her blessing as we dive into this exploration of how we can grow food in ways that honor and ultimately help to heal Mother Earth. Now, many of you may be wondering, who is Transition Nanaimo and how did we come to host this event? Well, a couple of years ago, I took a course through Post Carbon Institute called Think Resilience. And it was taught by Richard Heinberg, a well-known author. Some of you may be familiar with his books. And through that course, I learned about transition towns, or the transition town movement, which began in Totnes, England in 2006, and has grown to over 1,400 initiatives in 50 countries. And the transition approach is basically to bring people together to explore ways that they can act on the issues of concern to them. And there are three things about that approach that really appeal to me. It is locally based, where we live. It is people-driven, grassroots, bottom up. And it is solutions-oriented. What can we do? So I researched transition on Vancouver Island and found that there were groups in Alberni Valley, Cowichan Valley, Salt Spring, and Souk, but none in Nanaimo. So I got some people together who also expressed interest, and we incorporated in July of 2019. And one of the first things that we did was to send a delegation to meet with the Nunamic First Nations to explore how we could support their work. And there were a couple of things that they asked us to help them with. And then we started meeting with other local organizations to learn what they were already doing and how we could possibly work together for the benefit of all. Our mission is to facilitate community engagement and accelerate our transition to a thriving, low-carbon future in Nanaimo and beyond. So one of the first things we thought about doing was to hold a series of community conversations leading to the development of a climate emergency response plan for the city and region of Nanaimo. And we started to work with different groups, and we had a big launch event planned for Earth Day of last year. And of course, we all know what happened in March of last year. So when the pandemic hit, Earth Day did not happen, and we temporarily shelved our plans for a community engagement. But we continue to meet with local groups, including Nanaimo Food Share, Nanaimo Community Gardens Society, Island Roots Farmers Market, Loaves and Fishes, and others. And one of the things that we kept hearing was that the pandemic had made a lot of people aware of the vulnerability of our global food system. And there were many people saying that they wanted to start growing their own food, but they weren't quite sure how. So seeing that food was a major concern in our community, there were three things we decided to do. First, in January, we launched our Climate 911 weekly radio show. And for the past 2.5 months, our focus has been on food-related topics, all leading up to this summit today. And second, we partnered with Connie Kuramoto, a well-known gardening instructor in our area, to offer a 12-week Be Your Own Grocer course to teach people how they can grow their own fruits and vegetables all year round. And that course begins next Saturday. And finally, we decided to host this Food for Thought, Food, Farming, and Climate Change Summit. So what do we hope to accomplish? Well, our hope is that we will create the time and space for us to do a deep dive into the question, how do we build a resilient, regenerative, equitable, and healthy local food system on central Vancouver Island? And that's what we hope to explore over the next 2 days. But first, we would like to get your thoughts on where are we right now? And so what we're going to do is a little exercise, and I'm going to ask Shea to prepare the question. So in a moment, we're going to post a question in the chat, and you'll have 1 minute to submit as many answers as you like. And we would ask that you please submit each response separately. And Shea, if you could please post the question. So what words or phrases would you use to describe our current food system? So please take a moment to enter your words or phrases now, and you can enter as many as you want within the next minute or so. Industrial, fractured and fragile, distance, global, not sustainable, overpackaged, corporate. Imported supply, corporate, food supply chains, process, quantity, not quality, diverse, disappointing, GMO, wasteful, economic, business driven, backwards, mass production, business oriented, food waste, and maybe another 5 or 10 seconds or so, highly processed, commodified, not equitable, global. All right, and feel free to continue entering those. And what we're going to do is at the end of this session and the end of the summit, we're going to send out a word cloud. So the first word cloud is going to capture what people in the summit think about our current system. And then we're going to come back a little bit later and ask you to share your words or phrases on what we're going to be talking about today. And so now let's get into that question of how do we build that system that we're talking about? And I'll turn it back to you, Marjorie.
Thanks, Don. That's a great lead in to what we hope to accomplish at this community conference. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Craig Evans, founding board member of Nanaimo Food Share and practical community activist who rarely takes center stage. Craig, for example, introduced recycling to Nanaimo before settling into the learning and training of regenerative farming as his vocation. He's one of those rare individuals who never got deflected from his values by pursuit of credentials and career. Craig just is a priceless community asset. Craig, we invite you to make your personal land acknowledgement and share your story, illustrating the importance of community in building a local food system. Craig?
Thanks, Marjorie. Yeah, and my personal land acknowledgement is we are the land. The land comes from the soil to the food we eat to our being. And I honor all of those who have traveled on this land and been on this land. And there's a part of me that looks at North America and thinks, you know, this was the last place the last great continent we arrived at. And it was the place where humans were not here. And it's just, things have changed. Hopefully we can get it to be a sustainable place. I'm gonna talk very briefly about my own personal experiences in agriculture. And I think they came out of what Marjorie had mentioned when I was running the recycling depot. So for years I would struggle trying to get recycling going in Nanaimo. And in the depression of recession of the early 80s, finally there was no way you could make recycling work. And so we closed the recycling depot down, and I always thought, gee, with the little money that I would get from recycling, I would be better off just growing food and eating it. And maybe I should just become a farmer. And so I took that summer off and kind of just started planting, and I realized the therapeutic and healing powers of just being able to grow food and trying to find that simplest method from the land to the hand to the mouth. And just, I found it really reinvigorating. And so I went to Malaspina College at the time, studied in the greenhouse program, and I came out of that greenhouse program. I knew how to grow food. I knew how to grow forest seedlings, ornamentals. I also knew how to spray pesticides and mix solution A and solution B and feed food in giant, plastic tanks. And we'd always ask our instructors, are you sure this is safe, what we're doing, how we're growing this food and the pesticides we're applying? And of course, we were told that everything was approved by Health Canada, and don't question. Health Canada has that authority. We're just applying what's safe, and then one by one, I saw every chemical that I was trained to use be discontinued, be banned. Most of those chemicals you're not even allowed to, they're not even on the market anymore. And then I realized, most of the chemicals from the 50s are not on the market, and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And I just thought food's the most precious thing that we put in our bodies, and it becomes us. And I didn't like seeing the applications of chemicals to the land and to the food that could affect our very consciousness and our health. So when I graduated from the greenhouse program, I realized I was trained to be a middle manager, working with people, trying to get the most profit out of the system so the owners could benefit. And I was just like, my heart wasn't there. So I set up Nanaimo Community Gardens as soon as I got out, and just kind of put the sign up and said, here we are, we have some land, we're gonna divide this all into different sections, and everyone gets a section when we'll farm, and we can train people on how to do agriculture. We had lots of people come in, some knew what they were doing, some didn't. And then at the end of that first year, we looked at over the plots, and we had about a 60 to 75% failure rate of plots. People, remember, this is everyone's individual plot. Some people knew how to farm and garden, and they did very well. Others would get it all planted and then come back 6 weeks later and wonder why it all dried up, or wondered why the weeds were so high. And then were wanting to take vacations and just weren't there. And out of that individual approach to agriculture and trying to provide a forum for people to grow food, the next year we just plowed everything and created one giant community plot where everyone took the jobs that they wanted to do, and we worked on this large plot at the same time. We found some people would want to show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and water. That's our seniors, that's what they wanted to do, to get up early and make sure everything was well watered. And then we had some youth who wanted to get up at the crack of noon, but they wanted to get there with the shovels and do all the hard work. And so it really balanced out. A lot of people knew how to prune, knew how to grow. Other people were there helping to harvest. And that summer, we had a huge bumper crop of food that we produced. And we had fridges in a garage, and there were people who were trained to know when things needed to be picked, and they would pick and put food in the fridges. And I'm telling you, we had a weigh scale and a book, and people could go in when they wanted food and take food out of the fridge, sign out what they took, just so we had a record of it. And it was sheer anarchy. And did it ever work well? Everybody got lots of food. Everyone were astonished. The fridge just wasn't emptied all the time. There was always food in there. And from that experience, it reminded me that together, we work together as a community. We grow as much as we can, and we try and feed everyone according to need. And it just started me off on the right path, I thought, to think about community agriculture. And over the years, we've just expanded the amount that we can farm, and we've got more infrastructure in place. So now working with Food Share, we're farming at a couple of different locations, and we have some greenhouses available, and we're working with Vancouver Island University and their greenhouse program to grow seedlings. And we have crews all over every day. There's a crew today transplanting eggplants and peppers, thousands of them, getting them ready for planting in the field. And I just wanted to tell that story, that together, working together, we are the strongest we can possibly be. And in my opinion, that's the way to go for community food system. Community food, like food is health. And if we're not looking after people's health on a community basis, then some people are going to drop through the cracks and have some real difficulties. And so that was the story I just wanted to share. It's an honor to be here. Thanks everyone for taking the time out of your Friday to come to this session and look for ways to grow a better community.
Thank you, Craig. I just love the way you said, when I got out. It sounded like you were coming through an open prison gate back into the world. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce Jen Cody. As Executive Director, I've got this written down, please bear with me because I want to say it right. As Executive Director of Nanaimo Food Share, Jen has focused on local healthy food production as the key to community food security. As a credentialed dietitian, she brings science to the table, along with commitment to local farming and community collaboration. She will give her personal land acknowledgement and speak to the central importance of healthy food. Jen.
Thank you very much, Marjorie. Can everybody hear me?
I can.
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Marjorie. So as my land acknowledgement, I'll just let folks know that I'm coming from the unceded territory of the Nanaimo, Tsinawas, and Suminas Nations and Coast Salish peoples. And I'll share that personally. One thing that resonates for me is the link of the land with food and my healing that comes from being on the land and engaged with food and medicines. I'm really noticing the longer hours of sunlight in the season right now. And already I'm feeling the shift of plants starting to wake up. We've been in the greenhouses for 3 weeks, and planting with the baby plants are all starting to grow and come up at the moment. In preparing for this meeting, I feel like the land that we're entering a new season full of possibility, which includes acknowledging that all of this work exists on land that's not ours. And my hope that the work that we're embarking on today builds relationships that are inclusive and address this history. And thanks, Margie, for the introduction.
Now we're going to continue on with some sort of an activity. Is that not correct, Jen?
Absolutely, Marjorie. So to help us to get to the heart of why we invited you to this meeting today and what's drawn you to attend, we're going to start with a 15-minute discussion activity. However, there's many of us on the call, and we want to create a space for some deeper conversation to occur in the theme of this gathering, food, farming, and climate change, and in creating a healthy, sustainable, equitable food system. So for this activity, we'll take 15 minutes, and we're going to move all of you into breakout rooms of 3 or 4 people where you'll have an opportunity to have a conversation. Now, before you move to the breakout room, we're going to provide you with a conversation prompt. It's just a suggestion to help get the conversation around the meeting's theme going. Feel free at the start of your breakout session to introduce yourself and your organization if you're representing an organization, and reflect on and discuss the prompts. This is a time to speak and be heard and to listen. And it's an opportunity to slow down your conversation and talk about the work around food and nutrition security and the food system and how you want to contribute to that. We trust that your conversation will be the one that you need to have today. And if you need help, just click on the Ask for Help button in your room. After 14 minutes, a reminder should pop up in your room to let you know that you have a minute to wrap up your conversation. And now before we move you into rooms, are there any questions? So Shea, I believe we're good to go. And if you want to move people into the breakout rooms, that would be great.
Great. So I posted the prompt in the chat. The most important food issue for me is, and some ideas to address it are. So if you need to be reminded of that anytime in your chat room, you can click the chat button and it'll come up. So I'm going to send you into your breakout rooms now. Enjoy your discussions.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had wonderful conversations in the breakout rooms. I know that that the conversation I had it's wonderful to meet new people and learn from each other. And we're just moving into the reporting back from the conversations and sharing highlights from the conversations with the whole group. And as you can see, we've got a large group with us today. So the way that we're going to participate is in a chatterfall. And so first, what we're going to do is share a question or a prompt in the chat. And you will have 45 seconds to compose your answer in the chat. And unlike the word cloud activity that we engaged in a little bit earlier, what we'd like you to do is hold on to what you wrote in your chat until we give you a signal to press enter and put your response into the chat box on the signal. And the signal is going to be, and after you hear, you can press enter and send your chat response to the chatterfall, and then you'll really see why we call this a chatterfall. There's 3 questions in total. Does anybody have any questions? Great. And so Shea, could you pop up the question or the prompt for folks? So the prompt is, the most important food issue for me is, and
oh, there is a question. Edna has a question.
okay.
Edna, do you want to type what's your question?
I can't type, so I hope you can hear me. The reason is that I'm trying to send chat messages and I don't know how to get the message out of the bottom box, which says to everyone, to actually send it. Sorry to ask this question, but how do you actually send your message?
You hit enter.
I don't see an enter on there, but okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, enter on your keyboard. So on a standard
enter
keyboard.
on the keyboard. Thank you very much. Sorry for that.
Oh no, every question is a good question. So I'm going to press start and everyone has 45 seconds to respond in the chat. The most important issue for me is, and then when I give you the signal, you can press enter. Very exciting. Okay, and we have another prompt. So Shea, if you want to pop the prompt into the chat box, the next prompt is something someone else said that is sticking with me is, and you now have 45 seconds to type into the chat box. Okay, that's 45 seconds. And if everybody just wants to take a moment and take a look at some of the responses, they're it's always nice to see what everybody has to say. And we have one more prompt. And Shea, if you want to pop that one into the box. And that prompt is, I'd like to know more about ... So if folks would like to put your responses into your chat and hold off on entering, you have 45 seconds. Okay, that's 45. Wonderful, thank you, everybody. And if you want to take a look at the responses again. And I will turn this back over to Marjorie.
We're running a bit ahead of schedule. I'm just wondering if we want to take a bit more time to review what people have said. I don't know, just a question to you, Jen, since this is your exercise.
Oh, sure. Well, I think that, you know, what we've got here are like some of the things that people have mentioned in terms of things that they'd like to know about. And I know that, Marjorie, that this is good information for you in terms of your moderation. So some of the things I'm just scrolling through is like how to create a sustainable local food box program, knowing more about growing veggies, where to get recipe ideas. People are asking about biodynamic food, what local farms sell at farms. Growing is coming up quite a few times about growing food. How the health unit and Island Health can be more involved and help fund food security programs. I'd like to know more about that myself. Organizations that promote local food, sharing food production with neighbors, land availability, shared resource on funding for community food. Those are just a few. It's not inclusive of everyone, but that's a few of the highlights.
Okay, Jen, one thought. One thought is that perhaps not everybody knows that we're going to share this information with them in what the academics used to like to call proceedings. You will get proceedings from us.
Absolutely. So all these chats will be collected up together and then they'll go out as part of the minutes, is what my understanding is. That's correct, isn't it, Shia? Wonderful. All right, Marjorie, it's up to you.
So I'm getting 10:20, and I'm not sure that all the participants will be available to move into the panel session that is slated for 10:25. I've got Jen right here, and I'm going to need Dawn and Craig, because we'll be asking each of the three of you a specific question as part of our panel exercise. So my question is to Tech Maven Shea.
Yeah, they're all here. There's Dawn and there's Craig. Yeah.
Okay. So when I bring them on one by one, they'll just show up. I don't have to do anything, do I? This is getting complicated for me. I want to start with Jen anyway. So Jen, I have a question for you. Where are you?
Oh, I'm here. Don't worry.
There you are. Thank you. So your question is, what resonates from your experience as dietitian, food share executive director, and farmer researcher as the place of health in food discussions? Not where it should be necessarily, but the place where it actually is, perhaps, in food discussions.
Thank you, Marjorie. I appreciate that. And I know that a lot of the theme for this is food farming and climate change. And like one of the pieces that I bring to this table is really around healthy eating and nutrition. So I come a bit with a health lens to the table, although I wear other hats in the community as well. And so one of the things that I often find is interesting when I'm at community tables or when I'm in the community is that people really have a strong interest in healthy eating and nutrition, but the information or some of the resources connected to that are often lacking in the community. And so, but the benefits of healthy eating and nutrition are so profound. And so an example that I could give is some of the changes that are happening in our community over time. So I don't know if people have noticed like shifts in the grocery stores lately, but I remember not too long ago, even 10 years ago, the size of the produce section at the grocery stores was actually quite a bit larger. And it's shrunk over time. And the number of items that are highly processed available to us in the community is more and more. So we've gone from 10,000 items in a grocery store available that's highly processed food to 30,000 items in the grocery store that are highly processed. And that's reflected now in our diets as people in our community, in the types of foods that we're eating and the skills that we're using in our homes in terms of the food that we're also eating too. And COVID has brought this out, that the sales for highly processed convenience foods have gone up quite a bit. Even with people at home and people, having, I would think, more access to their kitchens, that the foods that people are going to are really the comfort foods that aren't those foods that have nutrition. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because, FoodShare got really keenly involved in this a few years ago when there was a study that came out. That study was at the hospital, and they were looking at people who were being admitted to hospital and what the malnutrition rates were at the hospital when people were being admitted, and saw that 56% of the people who were being admitted to hospital were malnourished. And what that meant for FoodShare is we wanted to then look at why in our community are people malnourished. And there was many reasons that came out of people's experience around healthy eating or challenges to healthy eating, and what that meant in our community in terms of impact. And so at the hospital level, it meant that people were staying longer at the hospital. In the community, it meant that people might be misdiagnosed because of lack of nutrition as being depressed or having some mental health challenges.
Thank you, Jen.
Or being confused or having recalls. Thank you.
Thanks. Is Craig with us?
He just needs
Yeah,
to.
I am here. Sorry.
It's so well. It's the timing. We're not good at this. You have to be razor sharp with your not being on time, with your being too fast. So Craig, the question that I have for you is a wide open one. Just simply react to this question. What has being a community activist for about half a century taught you?
Whoa, that's a hard one. What has it taught me? That there's a lot of work to do for sure. And I'm now at the age where I'm looking to pass the baton. And so it's really important to train the next generations of people who are going to become community activists. And I'm so encouraged by seeing people in this meeting now, willing to take that baton and keep running with it. So we're fighting very large and powerful forces. So the economy might lead us all to an early grave, but certain people are getting very rich at it. And so there's no moral compass to an economic system like ours. And we're trying to include a moral compass in it.
Good one.
Just keep going forward and try, and if we all would just put our money down and think of how we want to work together.
Thank you, Craig. And there's quite a lot of food for thought there. The how is the hardest part of the dilemma we're dealing with, but we're getting there. And with the help of people like Transition Nanaimo, Dawn, are you there? Your question is, as host of Transition Nanaimo's weekly radio program, Climate 9/11, for the last few months, your show has focused on food. You have interviewed farmers, aspiring farmers, gardeners, authors, academics, researchers, seaweed cultivators, aeroponic gardeners, and others, all of whom are involved in one way or another with our food system. So what stands out for you from these conversations, Dawn?
Thank you, Marjorie. And I guess there are a couple of things that stand out for me. The first is just how incredibly broken and dysfunctional our current system is. Every single person I spoke to raised problems or challenges in their particular area of input into the system. The second thing I think that stands out for me is I don't think there's any single solution. There's no magic bullet that's going to fix it all. But it maybe it's a combination of 3 or 4 or 5 things that if we get those in place, those make a huge difference to changing how we do things. The other thing that really stands out for me is the degree of corporate control and concentration over our food system, from the big agribusinesses that account for about almost 10 big companies that account for almost everything we see in the grocery stores. The big agribusinesses that take 90 to 98% of all the farm revenues, leaving nothing for the farmers. And then the concentration in the grocery stores, where just 5 grocery chains capture 80% of every food dollar spent. I mean, food is so vital. It's not a good system when it's in the hands of a for-profit organization. And then I guess the last thing that really stands out for me is just a conversation I was having with Asia Jones Martin from Young Agrarians. And she's doing the last session today at 3:45. So I would encourage everyone to attend that. We were chatting and she just threw out this comment: what if every 10th person grew food for 10 people? And I said, wow. And where well, what if it was every 5 people grew food for 5, just to make it a little bit easier for each? I mean, isn't that a brilliant idea? That's the kind of thing I hope comes from this summit, is those kinds of incredible ideas.
Mm-hmm. Don, I'm reminded of Imagine Nanaimo, which imported a very interesting progressive architect to speak to us about how to build livable cities. And somebody asked him, what can be done about suburbia and the suburbs with these large pieces of property which are not really productive, but the people who live there are dependent on these systems that we see are failing. And I've always loved his answer, which was, they got plenty of land, they can garden on it. So I like that. I really felt that was worth sharing right now. It was so much worth sharing that I kind of lost my place, and I'm to turn to Shea to bring forward any questions that have come out from participants. Please, Shea.
Right, thanks, Marjorie. So yeah, if anyone has any questions for any specific panelists, you can say this is a question for Jen, this is a question for Craig, this is a question for Dawn, and please post it in the chat. If you have any chat challenges and you aren't able to type and you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. Anyone have any questions?
Something came up in the group that I participated in for a little while. There was a lady from Maryland with us who said economics is a real problem, that a lot of people can't afford quality food. And that ties in with my own heartbreak that a great many people are eating out of dollar stores in our community. Mm-hmm. So which of the panelists would like to tackle that one, the question of the connection with economics and the difficulty of getting enough money?
Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things that that really strikes me is just the power of healthy food in being supporting health for every individual, and that means, you know, culturally acceptable food and foods that people have the resources and abilities to be able to eat and enjoy, but also that they have have nutrition as a part of them. And so one of the things that I think would be, I think, very useful is taking a look at where that fits in with our health support system. So we have medical services plans, and we also have a healthcare system. And I believe that the healthcare system needs to start to recognize that in order for people to be healthy, they also need to have healthy foods. And as a part of that, there needs to be some supports and systems put into place so that people who are low income have increased access to that food. A lot of the work that's happening right now is about raising everyone's income level so that people have universal access to enough resources so that they have their basic needs met. And so that piece around making sure that everyone has adequate income is a really strong part of looking to what a healthy food system would be, which is that everybody has equal access to healthy foods. And there's a lot, and Sheila Malcolmson did mention that there's ad hoc programs that take a look at that, but really it's nonprofit community organizations that are bridging some of the gaps, but there isn't really a strong movement to help to address that. Another example is the Coalition for Healthy School Foods. And that is a group that is advocating for universal lunch programs in school settings, which again would really increase the nutrition of a lot of students in those schools, and comes back to that same piece, which is universal access for everyone to healthy foods.
Either of the other panelists like to comment on that one?
Yeah, I just like to bring forward an idea that was shared to me by Kathleen Gibson years ago. And she was like, anyone who lives at the poverty line or below should be able to go in a store and pay for certain vegetables, potatoes, carrots, onions, some, culturally appropriate foods within reason through their healthcare card. So you should be, it's almost like just, we know people need so much to eat. You're definitely not in an economic system and available to purchase everything you might need. So you could get basics provided just through healthcare.
That would be nice, Craig, if we didn't live with a provincial health system, which is the way it works in Canada, which keeps delisting things from the list of things they'll pay for.
Yes, but one of the things that they could start doing is at least collecting statistics around assessments for people in the health system when they come in around food security and food insecurity. So at least some of the information around what the extent of food insecurity in our communities is starting to be addressed. And an easy way to do that would be to list that with the physicians so that when they ask a food security question, they get paid to do so.
I like it. Jen, what do you say to people who say, I can't afford quality food?
Well, I think that for a lot of people, that's true.
Yes.
And I see that Don's raising his hand, so I don't want to step in too far before he gets a chance to have his say.
So I think Jen mentioned universal livable income. That would go a long way to addressing affordability issues. The two others that come to me is declaring food as a basic human necessity, making it a human right. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is there's no shortage of money. It's just where the money is going. And the bulk of the money is going to corporations. So for me, part of it might be changing the system where we pay farmers to grow food that is freely available, so that farmers are actually making a good income, and food is no longer a commodity. It's a basic need, just like air and water. Mm-hmm. So revolutionary ideas maybe, but maybe worth considering.
And I see on the chat here that someone's mentioned that what about empowering communities to grow their own food? And I'm so with that person on that score. I think, in a conversation I had recently with Craig, his was, imagine what would be the best way to separate people from their food. And that would be to separate them from their families, send them into a school setting, never teach them about how to grow food. And I know that there are programs within school settings that are working really hard to do that school education. So I'm not trying to suggest that it doesn't happen at all, but I know that for so many people in their lives and through their school careers, that connection with the skills connected to growing your own food and understanding healthy eating wasn't really a strong part of the curriculum. And it really does separate people from those opportunities to be able to gain some of those skills. And
so for people For people who are still involved in public education, what you're describing is that the energy to teach how to grow your own food is extramural, not intramural, right? It's not part of the curriculum, but there are people in Victoria who are responsible for that curriculum. And there are teachers who sit on committees to bring new curriculum in. And those of us who are excited about the prospect of change just need to find the right leverage points, I think, because we're all talking about it.
Yeah, there are advocates within the school system who are really keen on it.
That's what I want. That's leads me to session 6. Farmer Brown is specifically talking on that topic. So anyone who has a specific interest in that, it's very exciting how he's bringing that into the BC curriculum. That's his mission. So
yeah, and there's really good examples in our community as well. So Food Share has 2 urban farm sites, and we do employability skills training and engage the community in the skills for growing food, both for people in their own homes or gardens, but also in a setting where people would learn the skills for growing for others on a larger scale. And so that's some of the important work that is happening. And also the skills around seed saving, because without seeds, there isn't really growing food if you're growing fruits and vegetables. And so that's another strong piece that I think is there. And I know that for people who have the access and some of the resources to be able to grow their own food, it really does strengthen people's access to healthy foods. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that Dawn's mentioned some good ideas too.
So Shea, do we have any participant questions coming up?
Well, Terry mentioned about what about the farmers market prices are typically higher, and that's understandable, but sets up and have-nots when it comes to eating local. Ideas for making it more affordable, increasing supply. Larry actually responded to it a bit.
We need to hear that. Tell us.
So Larry, he's involved with Island Roots, right? Take another look.
He's the president of Island Roots.
Farmers market prices are often not more than stores. There is, though, a competitive mindset among producers and markets, and that makes operating a market difficult. Fewer markets would help.
Mm-hmm. And there is also the BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program, which Island Roots is partnered on, and that offers coupons to low-income families and seniors to be able to purchase at no cost at the farmers market, but the farmers are reimbursed the full price of their produce, the market value, through that particular program. So it's a really great way to link community members to the farmers market who might not otherwise have had that opportunity. The challenge with that program is just it's limited. So the number of families that are participating relative to the number of the families that could really benefit from that program, it's a small percentage, but it sure is a step in the right direction.
Well, I have a further question about supermarkets. I'll come back to it, Don, though, because you're ready.
The other thing, I mean, Jen has already spoken to the connection between food and health. So if there are those who are struggling to afford healthy food, what would we need to do to direct more of our health dollars to help bridge that gap, given that the health savings would probably more than offset the cost of subsidizing food vouchers or gift certificates or something for those who might be struggling to afford food?
Mm-hmm. I know that there's some good models that have come up in the States because there's a number of the health insurance companies down there that have realized that they save money if they link the people who are covered by their insurance to opportunities to be eating healthy foods. And they link them to personal coaching around access and skills connected to healthy foods. I'm not sure if they address the income issues around access because of income in order to purchase foods, but I do know that they do personal coaching around that, and they're private companies. They wouldn't do it unless it would save them money or the company benefits in some way. So I think that there's some strong evidence around that. In the public healthcare system, I would love to see us move in that direction.
I was going to raise the question about supermarkets, because if you walk into a supermarket, it's a bit of a shock to realize how much of the stuff in there isn't needed. And I don't think it's the poor people who are buying that stuff. Poor people I know are tremendously careful with their budget and try very hard to measure it out easily. Whereas somebody like me, who's always had a solid middle class income, I can remember when I had my epiphany, I was standing in a supermarket with 4 packages of Kool-Aid in my hand. I'd never seen Kool-Aid before I came to Canada, I should say. Anyway, there I am as a young housewife, and I suddenly go into a place of rebellion and say, no, my job is to be the mother. We're not going to take that stuff home with us. But I had the choice. I want to know why so many people with enough money to buy all the junk that's in supermarkets, why they're spending it on all that junk.
The short answer, Marjorie, it's called advertising.
It must be. It must be chic and trendy to buy soda pop and other stuff that really a whole family can live without. My family lived without it so long that when they were finally reintroduced to soda pop, they couldn't drink it. It was too sweet. So again, we came back to what one of the people in one of the breakout sessions said, which was, we have to make a bunch of personal choices. We have to stop avoiding those personal choices. And the people who would find it easiest are the people who have disposable income, not the people who don't have disposable income. So we're talking about 2 different streams in the economy there, aren't we, Don?
I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat to see the comments. What was the comment? What was the question you asked?
2 different streams in the economy are the people with disposable income and the people without disposable income. It's not the people who don't have disposable income who are buying all the junk in the supermarkets. It's the well-to-do people, the ones with extra bucks. They're spending it.
Although, and I don't know if that is the case, but I would imagine that those that are on a tighter budget are looking for the cheapest way to feed themselves.
Yes.
And often the cheapest way is not the healthiest source of food.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to address.
That's a whole field where we need the stats, Jen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that is true. Like anytime you add fat, sugar, and salt into foods, then that decreases the nutrition value, but it does often those are the foods that people are the most able to afford if you're working on a low budget.
Thank you, folks, for all of that. I think we are approaching the time to return to a further activity. Is Shea around? Shea Tech Maven?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. It says here at 10:45, call on Jen to introduce final engagement exercise. So
Actually,
you don't have to do it.
Actually, I think Dawn is going to start it with the word cloud first. Is that correct?
Okay.
We had changed the order, yeah.
It's time.
Okay, thank you. So just as we did at the very beginning, we've been sharing different ideas and thoughts of how we could build a better food system, one that is more equitable, regenerative,
Resilient.
healthy, sustainable, all of those good things. So what we would invite you to do is, just as we did earlier, we're going to invite you to, and Shea is going to post the prompt for you. What words or phrases would you use to describe the food system that we've been talking about creating here today? And again, feel free to put in as many words or phrases and enter each one separately. And we will create a word cloud of that. And after the session, we're going to send out the 2 word clouds so we can sort of compare what people think about the system that we have now and the system that we want to create, and just see if there's any difference between those 2 word clouds in terms of what they reflect. My guess is there might be a bit of a difference there between the 2. So just take a moment to put in your words and phrases now. So I'm seeing a lot of local, equitable, caring, healthy, inspiring, affordable, Oh, these are all great words. Healthy and sustainable, social, natural, exciting, accessible, celebratory, fair to all, cultural, accessible, healthy, nourishing, empowering. I don't know about you, but those are words that sure inspire me in terms of the type of food system I would like to see. Government sponsored, natural, educating kids at school, easily accessible. Okay, well, thank you everyone for that. And I'll turn it over to Jen for our next exercise.
Okay, and so we're going to finish up with a chatter followed exercise. And so in the same way that we have done so before, Shea is going to pop up the first prompt, and that prompt is my aha moment was, and folks have 45 seconds to put their responses into their chat. Wonderful. And if people want to just take a moment to kind of read what people's responses were, looks really great. And Shay, if you want to pop in the next phrase. So, and this is our last chatter fall. So the most important action I can take to create a healthy food system in my community is, and folks can start, you've got 45 seconds to reflect on that and put it into your chat. Wonderful. What wonderful commitments everybody's adding to the list here today. Well, thank you so much. And I will turn it back to Marjorie.
We have done wonders with our timeline. We were worried about whether we were going to be able to fit so many activities into our morning session. And we're coming up on time to close this session. But I think we could take a couple more comments from people who are engaged and free to speak before I say thank you to everybody for participating in this session. So who would like to make a comment from the panelists, say?
One comment about the Good Food Box program. And so when I used to run the program at Providence Farm, we had a lot of people purchasing from the Cowichan Valley. And, you know, some of the participants at Providence Farm would buy the bags and they would say, you know, if I had $10 in my pocket and walked into the grocery store, there's no way I would buy this food. Meaning the potatoes, the onions, the carrots, the apples, the bananas, the fruit. He said, if I had $10 and I had to go in and I would probably buy Kraft dinner and some hamburger or hot dogs, thinking I've got my meal. And so he said it was the best $10 he ever spent when they purchased a Good Food Box and had that bulk purchasing power and got so much food for their dollar.
Don, do you want to make any last comments from the panel before I close it off with a thank you?
I just want to say it's really inspiring to hear the ideas that are coming from the panel and also from people on the call today. And for myself, the one idea that I'm going to be taking back to our board for consideration is a Feed 5 campaign to try and get 20% of people growing food in their backyards for 5 other people. So a lot of that's already happening. It's just a matter of, can we maybe scale it up to get more people involved in doing that? So that's what we're going to be looking at as a possibility for us going forward.
Thank you so much. Now, I am going to close now because I think people
Hold on, Marjorie.
Oh, you got it. Good.
So, and then I'm really looking forward to that, Dawn. I know that like Food Share does also have a gleaning campaign or a gleaning program. And so we do harvesting and collection of surplus foods from community members, both fruit trees and and also crops that people might be growing. And so I think, you know, it's one of the things that the gleaning program is really set up to do, with a ready-made group of volunteers who are really excited about that activity during the season. And I wanted to also welcome people to invite people to check out the Good Food Box at Nanaimo Food Share and our other programs as well. The Good Food Box is a program that I know really increases accessibility, and we've really changed over the year of COVID. We've moved from being a monthly box to being a weekly box. And right now we're just going through a community engagement process to take a look at how we can improve the box. And I just invite people who have an interest in that as a program to contact me. And if you want to provide some feedback or get involved with our community advisory committee for that program, then I'd welcome folks to participate in that particular project. So, and wanted to thank all the people who are here. That opportunity for all the learning has just been, it's been really rich. And I appreciate all of the participation that everybody's put into this particular project.
Thank you to our panelists. And thank you to all our participants for your attendance, because it's very clear from what's been showing up in the chat rooms and in the breakout rooms that we're going to have some very rich material to sift through at the end of this session of the conference, and think how many more there will be by the whole time the whole thing is completed. So I have one or two announcements to make to you. One of them is you could consider in the Nanaimo area joining the Transition Nanaimo Society. Or you could even, if you have some disposable income, consider donating something to Transition Nanaimo Society to help with the expenses, which are not huge, but rather a lot for a group of volunteers to undertake. So those are two things you could do. I just want to remind you that session 2 begins at 11:15 and runs until 12:45. It's called Food Recovery, and you have the opportunity to hear Peter Sinclair, who is the executive director of the Loaves and Fishes Community Food Bank in Nanaimo. And from all I hear, Peter is a wizard at the distribution of food from places you can scrounge it to people who need it. So that's our closing statement. Thank you all so much for participating.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Marjorie. I thought it would be fun if those who are interested would turn on their videos and we could do a gallery view and just see each other who's been a part of this community as closing. So if you put your thing on gallery view, turn on your videos, yeah, wave at each other, say hi. This is our community. Aw, beautiful to see.
There we are. Thank you, thank you.
Ah, beautiful. Wow.
Meg.
Wow.
Gosh.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you all so much for joining and participating. And yes, we'll be signing off. So you'll have to just rejoin for the next session at 11:15. So thank you all so much. I hope to see you at 11:15.